Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined today by my good friend Graham. How's it going, Graham?
Great, thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we're here today to talk about your new book, Theasthai. I've been really excited for this one because this is kind of a return to your roots, and it's a very kind of Greek mythology influenced text. Can you talk about this book and what the main inspiration is?
Yeah, so always inspired by Artaud and his belief that life and theater or performance, life and art are inseparable. And this is always philosophy that I'd had for most of my life. And then I discovered Artaud and was like, wow, this someone was actually speaking to me. And discovered a lot of other artists that have this similar mentality around the same time. And I wanted to explore that concept, and to do that, I went back to my roots. So, from about the age of 5 until 25, so about 20 years, I was involved in performance, whether acting or directing, lighting, set design, some form. I had my hand in theater, and I studied theater in university, Greek theater, from the development from ritual into profession, basically, and then some modern theater as well. So I wanted to reconnect with that part of my life because it's been quite some time. I'm 35 now, so about a decade since I've been involved in the theater or any type of stage performance other than maybe playing in bands.
Right. So while it was this central thing for most of your life, it has been something that's kind of taken a back seat, at least in the present.
Exactly. So it felt very nice to reconnect with this integral part of myself.
That's awesome. And so like what was the kind of the experiences you were going through when you wrote this book? Like normally like with your other books that we've talked about, you've had some kind of thing that inspired the collection, a moment. Is there a moment for this text?
The moment, I guess, would be hmm. I guess just stumbling across the word theasthai because I was not familiar with it before.
What does theastai mean?
It's Greek for ancient Greek for behold. And from theasthai, I read that's where we get the word theatron, which means viewing place. And that is the Greek word for theater, which is where we get the word.
Oh wow. That's so cool. Behold. So it's a view, it's to perceive, right?
But to perceive is to be engaged as well. And that's what I wanted to explore, was that as being the audience is part of the performance. And we observe, we perceive everything. We perceive ourselves. We're the audience to our own lives. And are we going to engage with that life, or are we going to watch it pass us by?
Ooh, that is very intense. That's so beautiful. Also, talk to us about this cover here because it's quite a striking painting. Did you do this? What is going on here?
So it was made with watercolor pencils, which are like pencil crayons, and then you add water to them afterwards to create textures. And I had in my mind when I was drawing, I was thinking deeply of um, the Manifesto of Futurist Scenography, which was written by Enrico Prampolini between 1915 and 1922. And I studied this in theater, and it just popped into my mind as I was making these colors. He said, he called for a theater of vibrations and luminous forms and colors produced by electric currents and colored gases. Such elements, he writes, can replace actors, evoking new sensations in the spectator.
Oh wow, that almost sounds like a synesthesia, you know?
Yeah, in a way. So it's like these gases are symbols. And
Interesting.
this is a war or a drama unfolding of these colors on the page.
It really also reminds me there's this amazing British occultist I love named Colquhoun, I believe it's how you pronounce it. And she does this whole color theory of tarot. and it's like incredible. She does a whole tarot deck. It's called Tarot as Color, and each of the cards is actually like an abstract color painting, you know, and it's just focusing on the vibrancy of the colors to impart the symbolic meaning.
Okay, I gotta get that.
Yeah, yeah, it's God, what's the press? I'll send you the link. Anyway,
Yeah, please.
stuff.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah,
Perfect version
Eiffel
of my
Colquhoun Tarot as Color, and tarot is spelt without a T at the end.
oh, like the root,
Yeah.
I
So
think.
okay, so you were really inspired by this kind of idea of color in theater. Wow. All right, and the
Yeah,
gases.
I'm
I love it.
not a big futurist fan, at least of the Italian movement, because of a lot of their
Of
political
course.
stuff. But they have very interesting, important philosophies and conventions that were carried over into other art forms. Even Russian futurism, very fascinating and less fascist.
I really love. Are you familiar with like the supremacist movement? The you know, the pure feeling, that whole idea of creating art that evokes pure feeling. I always thought that was interesting. A lot of abstract art is really really beautiful.
So beautiful.
All right, let's continue here. All
All right.
right.
So, of course, it starts with some Artaud quotes. As always,
Love it.
these are both from his work, The Theater and Its Double, which was written between the early to mid 1930s, but not published until 1938 when he was in an asylum. So the first quote: "A protest against the idea of culture as distinct from life, as if there were culture on one side and life on the other, as if true culture were not a refined means of understanding and exercising life."
Wow.
So again, this is the double, the double is a multifaceted element in his works, but one of the doubles is that life and theater are inseparable. They cannot exist without the other. Life is a performance, and performance comes from life.
This is such an important, though, even grander aspect in Artaud is that he is a staunch dualist, right? He's even when he talks about oneness, oneness is a temporary thing to then go back to this doubling. It's that creation is this continuous unfolding for Artaud, right?
Exactly.
Beautiful.
It's always a new cycle.
Love it.
The second quote: "And the question we must now ask ourselves is whether, in this slippery world which is committing suicide without noticing it, there can be found a nucleus of men capable of imposing the superior notion of the theater, men who will restore to all of us the natural and magical equivalent of the dogmas in which we no longer believe."
Oh
So
wow.
he's talking about returning theater to its ritual roots, its magical roots, because performance art is magic. You're taking an idea and turning it into a form, which then sparks new ideas in the minds of others.
Right. And what I love about this too is it almost seems very prophetic. There will be these greater people who will come after us, who will bring the true theater back, right? And will basically reinvigorate us with this idea of religion and spirituality. It's kind of a beautiful concept.
It really is. And so these are the two quotes that really summarize the overarching theme of the work.
I love it. I love it.
So let's go to the first poem.
Okay.
Well, not the first poem, but the first one we'll read tonight.
Of
This is
course.
Primordial Resonance. The first note shivers into being, echoing across time and space. The note is calling. It is a voice, and all reality emerges, weaving a tapestry of harmony and dissonance. One day the universe ceases its song, its echoes fade as we witness the unraveling into nothingness, until a new voice, or is it the same, calls out once more.
Wow. A tapestry of harmony and dissonance. This is beautiful, Graham.
Thank you. So I'm drawing from the idea of like the Vok here, like the first voice, the first sound. and how from that we get overtones that emerge, and that's, all counter harmonies that emerge, and together this weaves existence. But this weave will eventually unravel.
Right. It's so amazing. So Vak is a Vedic goddess of the voice. She's the voice that speaks the Vedas into being, that the rishis hear. You could also see this from the Kashmiri Shaivite standpoint, the spanda, the vibration, the ever expanding beating of the drum of Shiva and Parvati. Beautiful. Wow, I
And
love that. It was
and
inspiring.
again, where it says, until a new voice, or is it the same, calls out once more. So there's a new cycle that will start from this unweaving. Much in the same way that, you could think of the Big Bang as being a condensed microsystem that expanded, and we're moving towards entropy again, and will recondense into a microsystem and then explode again in a perpetual cycle.
Beautiful. I love that. Creation is continuous. So profound.
So next we come to one of two poems that are both titled The Double. This is the first manifesto. Performance reveals the truth of our being. If only we could have the ears to hear this dance of symbols, which clash, unite, separate in a stupefying cycle of creation and destruction.
Wow. Right. If only we could have the ears to hear this dance of symbols. That's beautiful, and it's so relevant to our entire lives, right? We struggle to recognize our lives are so short and are so intense, and by the time we recognize what's truly happening with this dance of symbols, it's over and beginning again. It seems,
Absolutely. And symbols are everywhere, and Archo wanted to bring back the importance of the universal symbols in theater, like the Greeks had. They had masks, they had specific costumes or motifs that could be considered as universal, which they could then rearrange in different ways on the stage to derive new meanings.
It makes me also think of that Platonic idea, right? Where the symbol at the root of the symbol is something, this idea that exists in some kind of in some premeditated form, right? Within the one is all potential, right?
Definitely.
Interesting idea.
Thank you.
And the symbols, it really makes me think of a lot of semiotic theory. One book I've been reading recently, I should pick back up again, is The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. And it really talks about a lot of this kind of symbols and how the meanings can be obscured and they transform. It's wild text.
So symbol actually comes from the Greek symbolon, which was a piece of pottery. And when there was an alliance between two city-states, between two polises, there would be an inscription written on a piece of pottery, which would be broken in two, and the ambassador of each polis would keep one half.
Oh, interesting.
And it would only make meaning when they came together.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So you need to clash and you need to unite, right? It's that classic game again. You know yourself through the other. Very
Making
cool.
it come back together. So next we have Ditharam. Our music invokes a frenzy. The Corifeos leads us 50 strong in sacred formations. Cries from the Olas mingle with our voices in ritual madness. Our songs give birth to tragedy. Wailing it claws forth from placenta.
Oh, wow. There's so much to unpack here in this one.
Yeah. So let's start with Ditharam. So the Ditharam was how to describe it. Originally, it was like a ritual to Dionysus. It was invented by a man named Arion, and he was from Lesbos. But some people say he was from Corinth. he found his patron there, but he was originally from Lesbos. And he was a kitharode, which means he was the singing accompaniment to the kithara, which was a musical instrument, kind of like a lyre. It was a stringed instrument. And eventually what happens was he took the meter of a lot of spoken epic poetry and transformed it, used a different meter. And he probably would have been the first one to set up that there was 50 in the Dithran chorus, and structured what became to be what we know of it now. Originally, it probably existed in some more ritualistic form, but around 600 BCE is when Arion would have formulated it into a more dramatic context.
Right. It's important we understand that all of this is coming out of the fertility rites, right, associated with Dionysus, and these rites of making, the mother, the earth reborn, right? You want to bring back the Kori, and it has to do a lot with this idea of making the earth orgasm, and there's a lot of this real intense magical songs where they would bring out the phalluses and they would be performing and they would be doing a lot of the singing and dancing. Like satire also comes out as a response. So first you get the dithram, and then the satire comes out of people who don't join in the dithram. They have to be mocked and made fun of to get them to come and join in, right? There's all this craziness that goes on with this stuff. But what's so wild too about the dithram is it becomes such an important mode across history. And it becomes this idea, it takes on this whole entire character within the literature tradition, where it becomes this form of poetry that is always about drunkenness and madness. And you see this persist into the Roman tradition, and then even to our modern day, people are writing dithrams, and it's a whole thing.
It's persisted for centuries, millennia.
Right.
And something else important to note is that at some point, some people attribute it to Thespis, but there's been debate about that. At some point, someone came and began to respond to the chorus, to the dithyram. And actor means answerer, the one who answers the call or the song of the dithyram. And so from here we get the actor and the chorus. And from there you can have a dramatic tension and theater can evolve.
That's amazing.
Tragedy being the first, tragedy and the satyr play kind of emerging around the same time.
Of course. Explain this word korypheos.
The korypheos is the chorus leader. The one who directs the dithyram, the one who directs the chorus, and would sing a lot of the songs.
Amazing. And then we know the olos, those are those two double-reeded instruments. It's two flutes that are played together.
What's important is the double reed. It creates it's kind of like an oboe, people described it somewhere between an oboe and a bagpipe. This droning, piercing sound.
Yeah, you can hear there's quite a few really good players on YouTube if you search olos. The other thing, the placenta. Explain what this means in the context of theater.
In the context of theater,
or what it means in general. Sorry, what do you mean by doesn't it have a different meaning for the theater? I thought it did.
Yeah, like the skene. Mm-hmm. The off stage where characters emerge and return to. And so the placenta could be like the actual chorus stage, the orchestra of the theatron could be like the placenta. The line between the skene and the orchestras where they tear through, so to speak.
Wild. That's such intense imagery. You're turning it really again makes me think of Artaud because you're imagining the theater as a body.
It is a body because it's life. It's organic. It's living.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Anything else you want to say on this one?
I think that's good.
Awesome.
So quite naturally, we transition to this poem, No Fourth Wall. This illusion obscures the truth. Shatter it, merge with the spectacle laid before you.
Wow.
So the fourth wall, for people who aren't super familiar with theater stuff, um, it's a concept. There was a movement called illusionism, which gave birth to naturalism and realism, and it was from this sort of basically quite from here we have the stage transforming into what's called a proscenium, where it's like a box set. And then the fourth wall would be literally under the proscenium arch. That would be where the stage ends and the audience begins. And this imagining a box where the actors are inside this isolated room and they don't address the audience. They pretend they don't exist. Stanislavski said it was important for public solitude, the ability to behave as one would in private, despite in actuality being watched intently while doing so, or to be alone in public. And the word fourth wall was coined by in 1758 by Denis Diderot. He was a philosopher, critic, and dramatist. And
Oh,
he says, imagine a huge wall across the front of the stage, separating you from the audience, and behave exactly as if the curtain had never risen. Now, this to me is problematic, very problematic. In all theater up to this point, there was no fourth wall. The Greeks did not have a fourth wall. The audience could call out to the actors, and the actors would respond in character. In Renaissance and in Shakespeare, in Renaissance writing, we have soliloquies and asides, which are directed at the audience. This is a breaking of the fourth wall. Breaking the fourth wall was never there. And, in Shakespearean times, the audience was quite rowdy. They would jeer, they would cry, they would, chant along. And this is something that became lost as realism and naturalism emerged. Not to say that those didn't have their important place in history, but again, the audience
there's
and
something that's lost here, right? Because there's this magic within the theater. It really makes me think of, like, if you were to compare painting and photography, right? Whereas, like, photography, you can get that perfect realism, but with painting, no matter how hard you try, you're never going to get that perfect realism. So at a certain point, why should you try? Why not do what painting does? And it's very similar with theater to me, where it's like you have a movie where there is a fourth wall. There's literally the screen, where you are a viewer viewing into the world, right? Whereas theater, you can connect and you can see the actors, right? It has a certain magic and an ability that a movie could never have. Why wouldn't you want to exploit it?
exactly, the audience is part of the spectacle. By watching, you are merging with it. I think this can happen with cinema as well, but not on the same level as theater. I
No,
would
right? Exactly. It's just like a painting. You can be extremely realistic to the point
painting
where it
itself
doesn't
is
matter.
painting is
Right?
theatrical, as
True.
Artaud would say. It's a dramatization of an idea or a concept.
Right. That's beautiful. I never thought. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah.
Artaud has whole essays where he just describes paintings in this like grandiose, poetic, theatrical way, and it's fantastic. His evocations of Van Gogh, of like just a bunch of others. It's just amazing. He invokes the children Lot's daughters in the theater in his double, and yeah.
No, he's one of the best visual. He has some of the best visually appealing writing I've ever read. You were sending me some passages from that book, Artaud in Mexico, where he's describing just the Mexican people like a ship against the waves. And it was just so
Montezuma's body like a ship against the
yeah,
waves.
Montezuma's body, that's it, sorry. It was just so visceral and intense. It's like, wow.
The colonizers' blood on the walls turning green again. Yeah, see,
Yeah,
it's such powerful imagery. So
we're gonna have fun with that.
that's all I wanted to say about this one, I
All
guess.
right.
Yeah.
This idea, right? Like we need to challenge these conventions and recognize that it is an illusion, right?
That's why symbolist theater was so important with Alfred Jarry and others. They broke the fourth wall again, and this was something that French theatergoers at the time were not familiar with, and it shocked them. We'll talk more about Alfred Jarry in another episode.
Yeah, we'll be getting into that. That'll be fun.
So these next two poems, it's part one and part two. We can pause after part one though, because they're both important. You know, there's a lot to unpack. This is the Masks of Dionysus. 1. Melpomene. This face I don, painstakingly crafted, shows exactly that. Pain, a universal element that can enslave or liberate.
Oh wow, that's beautiful.
So masks were an important part of theater. Melpomene was the muse of tragedy. And so the face that I'm donning is a tragedian mask, which were typically shaped in, you know, disparaging sort of expressions, languishing.
Wow, languishing in pain. And it's just, I love this, the last line here, a universal element that can enslave or liberate. Dionysus is liber in Latin, right? He is the liberator in many ways, but also sometimes it's that enslaver. It makes me think of this Luciferian kind of satanic energy, right? The devil gives you what you want. You can use it to break your chains, or you can use it to bind yourself further, right? The choice is yours, right?
Exactly. We all experience pain. What we do with it is what makes us who we are.
That's so true. And right. And we need to learn, we all have to face pain. There is no avoiding it. It's an aspect of reality.
Will you thrive in spite of that pain, or will you let it inform you, and from that you can learn and transform?
Right.
The pain will still be there, but you'll approach it differently.
Very true.
Something that I've had to wrestle with my own mental illness journey, you know, and trauma and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you've spoken at this at length, and this is something that unites a lot of people. It makes me think of Gast, right? In Gast Boucher's work, they had to confront an accident and the pain that resulted from recovery and then just ongoing life after like in post-accident, you know? And that is such a profound thing. Pain can make or break you, you know? It does incredible things to people. And
his writing spoke to me because I had a very intense wrist injury in 2018. My hand, I fell off a ladder in a job, and my hand completely separated from my wrist, except for the tendons and the muscles. The bones were no longer attached. And I had to have extensive surgery. They couldn't operate on one part of it. And my wrist has never been the same. And I'm left-handed. So to put things in context, I drew all 300 pages of my graphic novel over the next couple of years, you know, recovering from that pain. And I was feeling literal agony making that graphic novel.
Oh, wow.
I still feel pain. I can't do things. I can't play guitar anymore the same way as I could anyways. I'm still learning how to adapt.
Right. And that's life, right? Learning to adapt and overcome and transmute and work in spite of the pain or around the pain. And this will create new alternatives and new interesting ways, right? It's always interesting how people adapt and how we learn to face things.
We all have our own path. We all have to.
And it's a part of this thing with tragedy. Like you're invoking Melpomene, you're invoking tragedy. Tragedy, right? It's about experiencing the shame, and the visceral violence, you know, so that you don't have to. It's about, it's, you know, it's this idea of facing something by proxy, you know?
Catharsis.
Exactly. Catharsis. Wow. Beautiful. Let's go to
So now,
part two.
so now we go into part 2, Thalia. We must mock existence, reduce and re-examine its place, such that we may flourish and be verdant. This face is etched with laughter.
Wow.
So Thalia or Thalia is the muse of comedy. And when masks were carved, they would be in dedication, they would be about invoking the muse of Thalia on stage in your being.
It's,
Because we
this is
have
a
to
really
laugh.
interesting one.
Even the satyr plays were what you could essentially the first tragic comedies. And you know, they had elements of both tragedy and comedy. And we have to laugh. If you can't laugh at yourself, at the world around you, it'll destroy you. It's a powerful, powerful magic.
Yep. Right. We have to mock existence. We have to laugh at things. Like, it takes away the fear. It takes away the violence. It makes things approachable. And laughter also, it makes life beautiful and fun. And like you said, it makes things flourish, be verdant, right?
We can
We're
laugh at
talking
the
about, go ahead.
no, you.
I was just gonna say, we're talking about Dionysus, right? Dionysus is this god of the frenzy and the madness, but more importantly, generation, right? And he teaches you how to be that fool and take the leap into creation and to laugh in the face of uncertainty, in the face of absurdity, you know?
It's no surprise that in Dionysus's retinue was Galos, the god of laughter, right?
100%, 100%. It's a profound thing, right? And laughter, learning to laugh and to be ridiculous is part of the true path of the magician, right? Every magician is also an ass, is a charlatan, you know? And it's all about acting too. Like, there's a really profound thing in Aristophanes' frogs. He talks about Dionysus going down into the underworld, and he teaches you. It's basically a Aristophanes almost got whipped for writing this play. Okay, he got sanctioned. He almost got whipped because he revealed too much of the mystery. Okay, he tells you that you got to don the mask and dress up like Hercules. Because when you go to the underworld, if you dress up and act like Hercules, they're all going to think you're Hercules. And then they'll take you seriously. You know, there's
Yeah.
all these tricks, right? And it's so silly, but it's part of that thing. Part of it is being silly and learning to just be in this power of belief, right? Laughter gives you strength to you know, to take something that at one point he takes something that isn't a crown, sticks it on his head and says it's a crown. Everyone in the underworld believes it, right? That's
What's
magic.
important too is that the word mask in Greek is prosopon, which means face, but it also means in theology, it's the divine embodiment of a being. So these masks are the muses.
That's so profound. And you know, really need to think on this because it's the gaze in the face of the muse that is important. That's where the power is. You want to look into her eyes, you want to perceive her. That's where her magic is. I always think of that starry nymph Asterope, you know, the starry faced one, you know.
It's
Just
beautiful.
beautiful,
That's
right?
why I call it the masks of Dionysus, but I say that I'm donning faces. You
I love
know?
it.
So
Wow.
now let's move on. Here we have the double second manifesto. We move through the world as though performers on a stage. We enshroud ourselves in costumes to play the part of being. There is no life without theater, and the theater could not exist without life. We are gristle, throbbing with the pulse of everything.
I love this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to snicker. Did you intend for throbbing gristle? So shout out to Throbbing Gristle. What an amazing band. Okay.
Genesis Peorage has some very magical poetry.
Oh, totally. This is a beautiful one. Moving through the world as through though performers on a stage. Just what we were talking about, right? You have to imagine who you are and who you want to be. You have to don the costumes, you know?
Even as an actor, what really helped me with a lot of applying therapy coping skills actually was coming from theater, because as an actor you have to imagine yourself as the character, but also yourself playing the character. And where do those lines merge? What is the compromises that you make to create a unique performance?
It's beautiful. And it's also, we need to
It's like the
recognize
observer
that we're
self. You have
performing
to-
ourselves too, right?
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. It transfers to the inner observer self, watching us carry out our lives.
Right? You are constantly putting on a show for both yourself and for others, whether or not you intend to.
This is the way it goes. We're all wearing a costume, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
There's
nothing wrong with
beauty in
that.
that. There's beauty. You just have to know when to change your costume or when to alter certain aspects of it, you know? Because
Exactly.
we can't be static.
No, you got to change and put on new masks. If one mask isn't working, try a different one. Right?
Exactly. And this last thing, we are grizzle throbbing with the pulse of life, you know? We are meat, but we are the spirit and the mind in the meat.
Yeah. We pulse with everything. You know, the mind can imagine everything. We can conceptualize the entirety of universes, you know? It's an incredible, profound thing that within us there's the potential for all, you know, and we all need to recognize that and engage in that power of imagination, you know.
Definitely. Goes back to our talk on the doors of perception and the William Blake quote at the beginning, you know? If the doors of perception were cleansed, man could see everything as he is, infinite.
Yep. That's so beautiful. And right, you know, and so much about theater and all of this too is just imagining yourself. Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? You have to think about this. And so much about magic is learning to imagine yourself into the future. Beautiful.
What is the motivation?
Right?
Now we come to astromancy, Centaurus. Wrapped in robes and wearing a prosopon, I move through this world with only a hint of grace. Snapped like Job, no longer on bupropion, my hands have curled at the edges of my face. March with sigils, nightly vigils, invoke rigil and celestial ritual to unite with the stars.
Beautiful. I love the rhyme with this one. Usually you avoid rhyme.
Every once in a while, I'll come to some rhyme, but yeah, I did a rhyming piece in Chaosmos, and I kind of wanted to go back to that.
I really like this one. This is good with the prosopon to the bupron. I can't even say that word, but that's a great rhyme.
Bupropion.
Great rhyme.
Bupropion is Wellbutrin. It's a type of antidepressant.
I love it. So walk us through. What's this poem about?
It's about astromancy. It's about calling the star Rigel. I can't remember its full name, but it's part of the Centaurus cluster of stars, which is some of the brightest stars to the visible eye.
Wow. So you're drawing down the star of Rigel. You're invoking Rigel. Wow.
Drawing it down. And to do this, you know, I'm wearing I'm donning the costume, the mask, the face, if you will.
Right.
And acknowledging that I'm moving through the world, but I'm stumbling. We're all stumbling. No one has grace. You know, that's part of the beauty of comedy, is highlighting that. And then snaps like Job, because Job is constantly tested, just like I'm constantly tested by my illness.
Right. Wow. But you're still pushing forward, going through with the rituals, uniting with the stars.
Inscribing the sigils, attending the vigils, in celestial ritual.
Love it. To unite with the stars. Beautiful. Wow. Amazing. And Centaurus. Okay. Is there something to Rigel? Why Rigel?
I believe it's the brightest of the stars in the Centaurus cluster.
Amazing.
I could be wrong, but I remember reading that.
Either way, it's a cool. That's what inspired you. You were called to Rigel. I love it.
Rigel Centaurus, the third brightest star in this night sky.
Interesting. The third brightest star. Wow.
Mm-hmm. But the Centauri is the brightest star cluster to close to Earth that you can see. So now we'll come to communal transformation. They flock to their seats in droves, eager to receive divine wisdom from the muse. A powerful exchange between audience and performer, in which cruelty and ecstasy are fervently worshipped. So the theater was a place to come and get a message from the muse and be transformed by merging with the performance.
Right. We have to remember that the theater is born out of ritual performance for the gods, right? And it is about this communal transformation, as you're pointing out. It was that catharsis. All of the audience was also on entheogens the entire time, right? And they're witnessing this performance and these people who are performing it, they're not just actors, they are religious figures. They're priests, right? And priestesses. And
exactly.
Like you say, right? This is about learning the true messages that need to be taught, facing the true things that need to be faced as a community, really profound. Love it. And it's the totality, right? You got to experience the cruelty and the ecstasy.
You need tragedy and comedy. And this is an idea that Artaud really gets to when he talks with his Alfred Jarry theater and the theater in his double. He says, we must once again make theater something, once again, the public will flock to it in droves to transform themselves or to see it as like an operation, like they would go to the dentist, It's an important part of their hygiene, their spiritual hygiene.
100%. It's beautiful. Wow. Love it.
So now we'll come to the last one that we'll read tonight, which is also the last one in the collection. Give me the void. I don't want to die. I want to be dead. Return me to the skene. This character's costume is worn and no longer serves a purpose. The robes, the flesh, the spirit, the masks, I am done with them all. Let the chorus sing of my ripples in the chaosmos.
Wow. This one is intense.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The first line, I don't want to die, I want to be dead. We all want the release. We all want that culmination of the ending of the pain, but we don't want to endure the pain that brings us to that state.
This is a very common sentiment that you hear from suicidal people, right?
Yes.
It's not that they want to die, it's that they don't want to experience, right? And that's what it is to be dead, is to be without, right? They don't want to experience this anymore.
So that's partly where I'm coming from with my own suicidal thoughts. But also what's important to note is that in Greek theater, you never see characters die on stage. They die in the skene. And you hear the action and and you see the reactions of the characters on stage to the sounds, but you never see the character die. This would be sacrosanct, or yeah,
it would be, right? Like, and it was this idea that everything had to be obscured, right? And it was about, again, this idea was that through the theater you don't perceive the violence directly. You perceive it indirectly, and then you can learn to confront it, and you can better perceive it through the imagination, right? And we need to understand what the skene is. It's that magical tent of transformation. It is also part of the vulva, right, of a woman. It is the clitoral hood. So they were seeing this the theater is supposed to be a womb where
Yeah,
you are giving birth to this performance, and the characters are going back to the womb to transform and be reborn.
exactly. Typically, there were only one. Originally, there was one actor. Then Aeschylus introduced the second actor. Sophocles introduced the third actor. These actors would go into the skene and they would change costumes and switch between the different characters. So they would literally be dying and being reborn each time they
Wild.
entered the skene or returned, because it's the womb.
Yeah, it's the womb. And that's what you're getting at here. This character's costume is worn and no longer serves a purpose. So you have to go be transformed.
And then it's only the chorus that sings of the deeds of the character, you know?
Right? But this is
And
also important. The chorus persists, right?
it's the chorus that relays a lot that relay a lot of the universal symbols in the myths.
Right. The chorus is also a recognition of the persistence of life and creation and the world that exists outside of the performance, right? Often the chorus would be the gods or the wisdom of the gods, the wisdom of the world itself, right?
Sometimes it'd be the populace, but the populace from the perspective of a divine, you know, they are the embodiment of a characteristic of some sort of divine musing, you know.
Right? Consensus.
Yes, thank you.
So what do you talk about Chaosmos? I know you released a zine recently called Chaosmos. This is a very important word to you. We know it comes from literature. It has a really cute little story. Please share.
Yeah, so Chaosmos was coined by James Joyce in his work 1939 work Finnegan's Wake. And it was adopted by Deleuze and Guattari as well, the post-structuralist philosophers. And it has come to represent the cyclical dance between chaos and cosmos, between order and disorder. And I created a whole hand. I'm still working on your copy. I've got these, they're all handmade zines. Each page is handwritten poetry, hand-drawn illustrations of the marginalia sort of type, so lots of drawings in the margins of the pages. And there's only going to be 20 copies to start. I'll have gone through 5 of them soon, so not many left. And then I bind them all myself in purple ribbon.
Beautiful. What a unique, incredible piece. I love it. And this idea of the dance between being and non-being is so central to so much of the mystery, you know?
Absolutely. Dance is the performance, right?
Yep. It's that
life performing for us, and we're witnessing it. So the back of the book, I don't know if you have the sigil.
I do. It's on the next thing here.
Amazing. So this is on the back of the book, is a sigil that I created myself. And what we have is the duality of spirit and matter. Spirit and matter, spirit at the top, matter at the bottom. The diagonal line is the mind, which emerges at the intersection of the spirit and the body. And then the sort of parenthetical part here represents their eternal fusion.
That's beautiful. Wow.
So that marks the back of the book. And on the inside of the book, I have another sigil, which I forgot to send you, but it is Chaosmos.
I love that. That's so cool. Here, I'll make you big so the audience can see you. 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
How does this go? Oh, there we are.
Yeah. This is the cyclic nature of creation and destruction, this beginning of a cycle and the end of a cycle. And this is the force that, the nothingness from which these things are come and are returned to.
I love that.
It looks kind of like a womb.
It does. You know what? That same symbol or similar symbol is the Visca Pisces.
Oh, yeah?
It's representative of the same thing. X marks the spot where you can either go back around or you can start a new cycle or you can break free of the cycle.
I love that. Wasn't
right?
intentional, so I love that synchronicity.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, this was so much fun. This book seems incredible. When is it going to be released? When can people be able to purchase this? Can they pre-order it already on your website, or?
Yeah, you can pre-order it now. My plan is to publish it later in July, mid to late July. I'm having someone format the cover for me, which is something that is just a little bit beyond my technical capabilities. So I always outsource to my sister-in-law.
Love it.
Bless her.
Amazing.
So yeah, you can pre-order it now. It's $5 because it's quite short. It's 19 poems, and yeah, that's my
Amazing.
story. Thanks for listening to my rant and my poems.
That's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So we have a couple things that are coming up. So on Saturday, you and I are going to be getting together for Searching for Dragons, and we're going to be talking about Antonin Artaud's Heliogabalus. Do you have that? Can you show the audience? It's such an incredible cover.
Make sure to keep it handy. Heliogabalus, or the Crowned Anarchist.
Right? And this is dealing with the Emperor Heliogabalus or Elagabalus, who is famous for being sort of what we would modern people call trans, but they're gender fluid, certainly, and they went through this gender transition rites to become the priestess of the goddess Cybele. And we're also the emperor. Really profound character. And you were telling me about this book. This book is kind of, Artaud envisions the war of the sexes embodied in the flesh of Heliogabalus.
Exactly. It's wild. Lots, ancient Syrian religion, ritual castration, political scandal, great intense upheavals, amazing transformations in himself and society.
Right? So if you're not familiar, check out some more Artaud before this episode. And also you could check out the Hymn to the Mother of Gods, which is an episode Graham and I did, specifically talking about the mother goddess cult from the perspective of the Emperor Julian, who is a later emperor who's trying to revitalize this cult that Heliogabalus was the center of in their lifetime. So really interesting stuff, right? And it all kind of connects. We're going to have so much fun with this episode.
I'm very excited. I have way too many slides. I'm sorry. It's going to be a long talk.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. You were sending me some wild stuff from it already, so we're going to get into some, blood and semen like you see on the cover, right?
Exactly.
But Graham, you're always busy. You always have projects on the way. There's always new things coming out. What do you have that's coming up besides Theasthai?
Also in July, I'm going to be publishing the 3rd edition of Hidayeth, which we've talked about on the channel. That was my second poetry collection from 2015, and I'm doing, a slightly early 10th year repressing of it. 9 years, I guess. But so that'll be coming out in July as well. And I'm just chipping away at these Chaosmos projects here, and that's pretty much it, to be honest, for now, other than our Searching for Dragons projects, which I'm always excited for.
Right. Hiraeth was awesome. You guys can go check out the episode that Graham and I did talking about that. We also did an episode talking about Chaosmos, if you're interested in any of this poetry. You do also have your graphic novel that's going to be coming out soon through Spirit Moves Press. I won't let you forget this.
You're right. Thank you. I was forgetting. So November 29th is the planned release date, finally, of my graphic novel, which I've been working on from 2017 to about 2022. And whether in concept or in actualization. And it was a labor. It was a labor to create that work, The root of passion is pati, to suffer. And I physically suffered making this graphic novel. And, it was a passion. It was a labor of love. And I'm very excited to put it out into the world. It has a soundtrack that you can listen to, which is currently up on my Bandcamp.
And you can find the link tree in the description below. You can get all of Graham's links. Speaking of your band, you also just released an EP about maybe 2-3 weeks back now. Do you want to
Yeah,
talk
about,
about that?
about 3 weeks ago, we released the isosceles infection. We released Dream Eater, which is a 28-minute progressive metal experiment, I guess you could call it.
It's a lot of fun. I really liked it. It was one that I could put on and just kind of like flow through. It's really good while I was reading. That's how I usually consume music. So it was amazing. Loved it.
Thank you. I think that's about it. Thanks for reminding me of those two things. Those are very important.
Right. But yeah, you always more projects on the way, always more stuff. We got more Searching for Dragons. We were planning. Do you want to show the Alfred Jerry book that you just got? Because we're going to be talking.
Give me 1 second. I'll grab it because it's so cool.
Right. Yeah. So this is something that Graham just picked up today. We've been talking about Alfred Jerry was a character who was really influential in theater and within the Surrealist movement. Big influence on Artaud. Artaud called his first.
Technically the Symbolist movement.
Sorry,
which
Symbolist.
Is precursor.
Yes, precursor. It's so hard to remember. I don't know how you memorize all this stuff.
So this is what my edition looks like. It's got all these crazy drawings, and the script is handwritten. Just to match, and the illustrations are all just hilarious and weird, and it matches the strangeness of the play. Alfred Jerry was important, like you were saying, influence on Artaud. Artaud's first theater production company was the Alfred Jerry Theater, and yeah, his 3 plays, the Ubu plays. This is Ubu Roi, the first one, King Ubu. And it was the only one performed in his lifetime. There was one performance, and it was so scathing towards the bourgeois and such abandon of theatrical convention that the audience literally rioted.
And this is why we love this stuff. Like, can you imagine how uptight the French society must have been to riot over a performance of a play? But still, I gotta know what's at the heart of this play now. What a tease!
Diving into those at some point.
So excited! And then for my next choice, we're going to be getting into Goethe, Faust. Right, and this is classic of classics, one of the greatest plays ever written, and such an important magical piece of literature. And there's also a companion piece, because you had a book on Faust that we're also going to talk about too.
There's one is an Alfred Jerry book, The Exploits and Opinions of Dr. Faustroll, and the other is Seeking Faust by David Pendle.
Right. Amazing. And then I also want to get into, I have Christopher Marlowe's Faust. So we're going to be on a Faust kick for a while. This is going to be a huge, fun little avenue for us to go down. So lots of crazy things that are on the way. Great art from Graham. So make sure you go down into the description. If you look in the link tree, you will see all of Graham's links. Support Things in My Chest, and you can purchase Theasthai right now, $5 pre-order. 19 poems, super awesome. Any final words for our audience, Graham? What do you want to leave people with today?
What to leave people with? Despite being maybe within the realms of the cosmic will, you could say, which is the cosmic drama, we are our own characters, and we can choose our own motivations and what to do and what character we want to be.
That's beautiful.
We have our own will, and it's about reconciling your will with the greater will.
I love that. And I just want to add, imagine yourself into being. What do you want to be? All right. Peace and love, everyone. And tune in on Saturday for Searching for Dragons, doing Artaud's Heliogabalus. Take care until then.